Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another Brony Debates Live. I hope you're all doing well out there. I had to pivot the topic for tonight at the last second here. Cordero had something come up and needed to bounce. Anyway, instead of talking about more writing advice, which is a darn shame, I was looking forward to that. I wasn't here last week, and I had input that I wasn't able to make during the chat. But anyway, last minute shift, and now we're going to talk about graphics versus gameplay versus story. This one was suggested to us by Hariman. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Moderate Muppet flailing with mild screaming.
Alrighty then. That's a slight improvement from last time. So, what made you want to talk about this one?
This subject has been on my mind for literally over 20 years since I could buy video games for myself.
Yeah?
It's based on when I originally got into JRPGs, where the first JRPG I played was Skies of Arcadia, which has a great story, but decent gameplay and graphics. And then I pivoted to Final Fantasy X, which has great graphics and a very poorly told Star Wars prequel style story where you have to dig to find the good part of it. And then I got a game after that called Disgaea Hour of Darkness, which has a more fun story and got me fully into JRPGs.
Alrighty then. And tonight we are also joined by EmeraldSpencer once again. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I am doing very good, thank you.
Good. And this guy's our resident video game expert. I think this dude has probably played more games than well, I don't know about Harriman, but probably, Cruizer and I combined. Speaking of which, how you doing tonight, Cruizer?
Doing all right, doing all right. Things are going
Good.
pretty good. Got to the gym, worked out, feeling energized.
Very good. Alrighty then. So, with that, let me read off our patrons here. We actually got a couple of new names, so I'm very excited about that. Supporting the channel at over $10 a month is Princess Heather Blossom, Shady Oak Ministries, Sid McConroy, Autoknight, EmeraldSpencer, who's with us, Senko, DJ Skywalker, Rein-Kun, Pony Cordero, QFlash, Billy Henline, Alden MacManx, EasyModeGamer, Kanto Acrylic VA, Mr. Sonic 31, Ridge the Hedgehog, Alicia Lynette, Zeta Z, Sniper Nighter, Calbeck, StarChaser, VentureCorp, Willie Eisen, 7 equals 1 Heart, so that's the other new name tonight, and Dark Malcontent, executive producer of Titan Art Studios. Be sure to check out all of those content links in the description, as well as how you can support the channel and what you would get in return. So, we've got, why we're talking about this from Harriman. But let's just start right out the gate here. Emerald, what do you think is the most important between graphics, gameplay, and story?
Oh, good lord, you're throwing that one right off the bat. So the problem is, you're never going to have a definitive answer for this because of the multitude of genres and styles that games can fall into. For example, I am playing Minecraft as we speak. I think the gameplay is phenomenal, and while many people have issues with the graphics, I rather like its art style. But there's almost no story to be had here. So if we were having a conversation about purely story, this game's gonna fall flat compared to something like God of War, Final Fantasy, Life is Strange, any other more story-based game. So really, you can't determine which one of those is superior because each of those contributes to different games in different ways.
Alrighty then. And Cruiser, how much of a gamer are you?
I would say moderate.
All right.
And honestly, I think at least the one that's probably the most important is going to be, or at least what comes first, probably the looks. Because before you ever even pick up the controller to play the game, you're going to be seeing the box art. You're going to be flipping that thing around to see what the gameplay looks like. So I think, at least first and foremost, I think the look is going to come first.
So I'm gonna jump in here now. I think you're all wrong.
Of course you do.
Indeed, and I'm usually right when I say you're all wrong. So here's the thing. The story is very important. You definitely need a good story in most games. Emerald, quick question. How many successful sandbox games like Minecraft are out there?
Successful ones.
Yeah, I'm sure people have tried.
For
I think Roblox falls into that category.
Perhaps. Maybe Fortnite. Fortnite is.
I think Fortnite's a shooter first.
Well, yeah, Fortnite and
Battle
PUBG, those are battle royales. But you were talking about the gameplay for Minecraft, but the thing about that is Minecraft is pretty much one of its kind, as far as I can tell. And everything that has ever tried to be similar, it just comes off as a Minecraft clone or a Minecraft ripoff. And
Cube
Minecraft
World,
has persisted
there's
for
other
darn
games
near
like
20
that.
years now, and it's still the only one of its kind. Battle Royale games like Roblox, Fortnite, PUBG, those are all relatively new. And sort of piggybacking off the success of Call of Duty and Halo and Red Faction, so very successful either first-person or third-person shooter games that had a story to it. Perhaps even games like World of Warcraft or Dota or League of Legends that have story elements to them outside of that. So it's very rare that a game is noted just on its gameplay. It usually is being carried by the story, but remembered for the fun of the gameplay. I think we could say the same for like God of War and old PlayStation 2 games, that a lot of which had a lot of story. And then when you go back to even further to like Sega Genesis, and I was playing a lot of Street Fighter, and I was playing a lot of Sonic the Hedgehog, and I was playing a lot of Vector Man when I was real young. And even with the limited graphics and gameplay that wasn't always consistent, or just it could have been better, you could still glean the story off of those things. So you definitely need good graphics and good gameplay and good story in balance. But I think story is the most important because that's what's gonna help you remember. Things like Minecraft are a time killer. And without the story, you just kind of waste your time on the game and then forget about it. It doesn't have that staying power, that replay. And if graphics were the most important thing, well, back in the Genesis and NES era, when the box art was always really nice and colorful and stylized, how many of those games actually looked like that?
A good chunk.
No,
the black box NES games.
Streets of Rage 2 did not look like its box art. Street Fighter 2 did not look like its box art.
Did you flip the box around?
Gyromite looked exactly like its box art.
Well, I'm talking about the front, so that's on me. I assumed that Cruizer was talking about the. Yeah. So,
hold on, this needs a visual aid.
So
I don't know how to help you with the video. So go ahead, Hariman. What do you think about all that?
Personally, my order of importance is story, gameplay, graphics. If you have a really good story, people are not going to care about the gameplay and the graphics. They are going to latch on to that story. If you have really good gameplay, people will have fun with the game. And as long as the story isn't utterly god-awful and off-putting, they'll love the game for the gameplay. But if you only have good graphics, you basically have the Fabio of games. Pretty to look at, not good for much else. I mean, unless that's what you want, is to just look at something pretty.
Isn't that what Minecraft was all about?
No. Minecraft is more about mining and crafting.
Minecraft is actually actually proves another point about story is you can have story if your game gives the players a way to make their own stories. Oh my god, I was so deep in the mines. I was like mining out these 5 diamonds. I almost had enough for diamond armor, and I turned around and there was this creeper and I almost got exploded, but I ran away and oh my god, it was so close.
And
You
that's
get stories like that.
And that's when Herobrine showed up.
Hey, I mean, if you want a story, you're about to hear the story of a dumbass trying to fight 5 withers at once.
I forget who did that. Was that me?
Nobody's done it yet, but it will have happened in about 2 minutes.
Alrighty then.
And as far as what order I think matters, I think it's graphic, story, and gameplay, because again, you see something before you ever know anything about it. Like, you see a beautiful woman, she looks beautiful, she looks pretty, but you don't know anything else. So the look is going to come first. Then you walk up, say hello, then you're going to get to know the story and go a bit further, then you're going to get to know the gameplay. That's the order I think it goes in.
I'm actually going to counter-argue gameplay, story, graphics. Because you can have absolutely phenomenal games. Like, a really good one is SCP Containment Breach. That game has to be, like, I think it was developed in the mid-2000s, yeah. And its graphics are absolutely horrendous. But the atmosphere of trying to survive through a containment breach in the SCP facility has allowed it to persist to this day. I intend to play that game again at some point when I actually start uploading anything. But yeah, that is one where the graphics don't matter. The story is only kind of there, but the gameplay alone carries it to be a phenomenal experience.
But were people intrigued because the graphics looked horrible?
No.
It's
SCP is a franchise where you're in it for the story of the various the SCP items, where they're the dangerous things that are being kept secure, contained, and protected.
Yep. And specifically in the case of Containment Breach, when that containment fails, they are no longer secure, and you are very much not protected. Good luck!
Didn't they already do that and call it Five Nights at Freddy's?
This came before
in a
FNAF.
way, yes. The game Control from Remedy is actually SCP if written by David Lynch.
Somebody remind me who David Lynch is.
Mulholland Drive, all those really weird movies that don't make any sense and have like 2 possibilities for the ending.
So he's a writer.
Twin Peaks, I think.
Lost Highway? Was that him? Okay, moving on then.
Yeah.
Emerald, what would you like to add here?
Oh, go ahead.
Do you have any, Emerald, is there anything you'd like to add to this?
I mean, we kind of jumped off of my points of... I apologize, I don't know what there is to add to here.
I can add a
As
point.
I said, I'm gearing up to fight 5 withers, so I can add to the conversation about stories being told in non-sword story sandbox games, so I'm a little distracted at the moment.
Why would you play Minecraft while on the debate stream?
Because I was doing mindless tasks.
The debate stream is not a mindless task. The debate stream...
No, I meant mindless tasks in Minecraft.
How the heck did you...
you're distracted by a pretty looking image. The graphics come first.
Actually, I'm distracted because I have to count.
No, it's a compelling story he's making out of his gameplay.
No, but I stand by. I mean, let's face it. Would anybody, if you got a brand new game today that had the graphics of Atari, would you really devote that much time to it?
There are
I'm
so
so
many
glad you said
people
that. Yes.
that play that. Right.
Undertale.
Well, for Minecraft, Undertale. Have
VVVVVV.
you ever heard of
many
That's not
Nidhogg?
Atari though. I'm talking about playing an Atari, like a something that had a brand new game that was made today that has the same graphics as Atari. Would you really devote that much time to it?
Have you ever heard of a game called Nidhogg?
No.
We've
Never heard of
played it. Now, when we had those like game nights, fundraisers for the Grand Brony Gala, a lot of people were playing Nidhogg. That is like, yeah, that's right on par purposefully with the Atari in terms of graphics. And it's, very minimalistic, like ultra minimalistic pixel art.
Sounds like a
Definitely-
novelty.
Definitely operates way better than any Atari game ever did. But people love that game. People go to video game competitions and fight in Nidhogg almost professionally. There's a huge following for Nidhogg, and it did not come out that long ago. Let me see, we were working on the Gala like 10 years ago. It was a couple of years old at that point. So it's a little older now, but it was still, it's obviously a lot closer to us now than it is to the Atari was when it came out. It looks just like that, and people love that freaking game and play it all the time. So that's just one example I can think of off the top of my head. I've seen hundreds of different games that look like they're Atari games on the front page of Steam. There's definitely a demand for that kind of retro art style.
Sounds like though it's just known for being a novelty though. It's like, an Atari game that was made in 2023.
Maybe
an Atari
it
game
is.
that was made in 2023 with really compelling gameplay that's easy to learn and challenging to master.
They said the same thing about ET.
So
Which is
Oh,
better
so
than a lot of
worse for us,
AAA games nowadays.
So I actually want to turn that question over to Emerald. So Emerald, did you hear what I was talking about with the game Nidhogg? Like, what do you
Yes.
feel about is the 16 or 18-bit graphics in the modern day just a gimmick to you?
No, there's been many successful games. They use that as a limitation to spring creativity elsewhere. Just look at Shovel Knight. You get that side-scrolling NES-style platformer, and that has been insanely popular.
I think people liked it because it was a game funded on Kickstarter and it was an underdog story essentially.
That was part of it. The other part is that it also was a really good game in the
Oh, it's a fun game. Don't get me
side-scrolling
wrong,
Mega
but I do
Man
think
style.
more people thought this was kind of an underdog situation.
We've had
Kind of
other
like with Mighty
games.
Number 9.
We've had other games that fit that criteria and didn't do nearly as well. Mighty Number 9 fell flat on its face. I haven't played it, but but I've never heard anybody say anything good about the story or the gameplay. What was that other one? It was the space travel game. They called it
FTL Faster Than Light.
Yes, they called it the refund simulator after it came out. Because they just completely under-delivered on everything. So gameplay definitely
No,
was
wrong game. No
You're
Man's
right.
Sky.
No Man's Sky.
Oh,
That's
that
what it
one.
was. Yeah, so just because it's an underdog does not mean it's going to perform well when it goes live. If anything, now it's under more scrutiny. With AAA games, we almost expect the graphics to look good, but have horrible story and buggy gameplay. Just look at, Bethesda. So we get
Skyrim. Crazy
yeah.
Breakdancing Dragon Edition. Flies backwards, breaks your game, crashes your system. Don't go in that one cave. That quest is bugged.
Yeah, that's
not hyperbole.
It's not. I've been watching Heather play Skyrim and I've seen that happen a couple of times, and she ends up like needing to reload a bunch or do something else that like works around the glitch. It's a pain in the neck. But that's what we've come to expect out of AAA games. And like Skyrim looked good for its time, but like the graphics have gotten better since then. So
Yep, they just added bloom and reflections.
well, yeah, and there's only so much you can do without just, gutting everything out and replacing all of the assets with better ones, which some people have done. But they still all stand on their story. Like Skyrim stands because how many years, almost 20 years later, people are still finding things in Skyrim that they'd never seen before, and there's a community of modders, and that wouldn't have happened if there wasn't, every time you enter a new town, you get a new quest, which is a new story, but if those stories weren't good, people would not have stuck with Skyrim. And yes, the graphics and the gameplay were a factor, but I'm pretty sure it's games like that are standing on their story. Oh, what do you gentlemen think?
Never had a chance to play Skyrim, so that's kind of beyond what I know. Frankly, when it comes to RPGs like Scott the Woz, I'm not an RPG guy. I've tried.
I did get a chance to play Skyrim, and it was actually the first Western RPG I truly enjoyed. Because once I got out of the stupid tutorial dungeon, I started following the guy to Whiterun, and then I looked to the side and I said, "Ooh, what's behind that field? I'm going to go there. Wait, I can go there. Oh, that's why people like Western RPGs." And I think Skyrim actually hits a midpoint between Minecraft's you make all the stories yourselves and a JRPG's the story is told to you and you play along, where you're playing along with the story in Skyrim if you want, but you can also run around in circles and make your own story about the character, which I did.
Well, Emerald was right. There is no story in Minecraft. The story is the friends you made along the way. Right? Like nobody plays solo
those friends
Minecraft.
Are creepers.
Yeah, nobody plays solo Minecraft and comes away with like some epic story of something that they built in it, but everybody has a story that starts with my friends and I were playing Minecraft and that mini Philly did this. And then it unloaded and then a volcano erupted and there were creepers everywhere and we had to somehow get out of that and not lose all our items. Like that kind of everybody's got a story like that. So, shoot, if anything, that just means you can't really, like, it's hard to play Minecraft solo. Like, even Emerald, I know you're playing Minecraft solo right now, but are you not just doing tasks in there that are in preparation for when you're going to be playing with your friends later?
Yes and no. Because I'm actually going to hard disagree with you about Minecraft not being a good solo game. Because growing up, surprise, surprise, I didn't have any friends. So basically, all of my time in Minecraft was spent in single player, and I would spend months building out amazing worlds, and they were different every time. Like, I remember one time I built a village on the inside of a hollow mountain on the Xbox 360 edition. That was amazingly cool. Another time, I found a spawn that was on a mushroom island, and I built a floating mansion and built a village below on the surface below where all the houses were made out of mushrooms. And I remember one time, this was halfway between with friends and alone, because I started with a friend at a sleepover, but I continued the world solo, and that friend, I don't think he ever came back to my house after that. Not for that reason, mind you, just because schedules didn't line up. But we had a nice little village at spawn, nice underground base, many cool builds. The problem with what you're saying with the sharing of stories is that the stories about multiplayer experiences are a lot more exciting, but that doesn't mean that the single player doesn't have good stories. It's just that they're a lot harder to convey without visuals.
Interesting. I don't have a good comeback for that, but I will say that if anything, it just sort of adds on to my point that Minecraft is unique in it. Like other games could not pull off what Minecraft has pulled off. It's lightning in a bottle. It's one of a kind. I don't think it disproves. I don't think the existence of Minecraft, the exception does not disprove the rule here, if that makes any sense in my rambling.
What's the rule we're working with?
that 99.9% of the time a game is carried by its story. That I'm saying gameplay and graphics are important, less so important than story. I'm pretty sure the importance that makes a good game is story first, gameplay is a close second, and then depending on the style that you're working with, graphics are the least important by a wide margin. So it's like story and gameplay are close first and second, and then graphics by and large do not matter. There are games that work mostly off of their graphics, and when there's not a whole lot of gameplay or story, we tend to call those walking simulators. Or who's the dude that made Heavy Rain? And Heavy Rain
Visual
was
novels.
visual
Cage.
novels, yeah. And Heavy Rain was like the first like big successful one that a lot of people played. And it was like 95% quick time events.
Ugh.
It was more like a movie that you had to press buttons all the way through.
Well, it advertised itself as an interactive drama.
That
You
was
might have been
David
able
Cage,
to.
by the way.
You might have been able. I think you were able to choose your own ending to a certain degree. I don't know. I didn't play it.
Well, the choices you make affect the ending.
Alrighty then. So yeah, that was but anyway, when you focus all the way on graphics, you get games like Heavy Rain, and Heavy Rain's probably the best example of that kind of thing. And even so, like, it didn't age that well. Not a lot of people played it. A good number of people liked it, but certainly not everybody liked it. You know what I mean? It definitely did not have the staying power, and I don't think there's as much of an active fan base as there is for most other famous video game franchises.
All right. But now here's a question I want to ask. How do games like Mario and Sonic factor into this?
Honestly, they've
I
just
think-
been around for so long that they've just become engraved in people's heads.
Well, no, because
And-
the gameplay of the original Mario Bros. Still holds up very well.
Indeed, but there was still an essence of a story there that I don't think people would have invested in the Super NES or the Sega Genesis if the elements of the story had not been there. So this is this is half of a credit to Cruiser's point about the box art. You would pick it up and go, and it would say something like, "This is Sonic the Hedgehog. He runs really fast and he needs to save all of his animal friends from the evil Dr. Robotnik who's trying to destroy the forest." Cool. There's my story. And then as you're playing it, with the limitation that they had on the technology, just the visuals, we had to convey, Sonic running through progressively more industrialized sets. And, how's he going to find and collect the Chaos Emeralds so he can defeat Dr. Robotnik at the end and save all of his friends. So there's still story in there. It's just conveyed differently. But it definitely would not have stayed if there was just no story. If it's just, hey, here's this cartoon character that runs really fast, get to the other side. That was more of like an arcade sort of game. And I'm seeing Rusty Helm ask about that in the chat, and I was going to get to it eventually, but like games like Fix-It Felix, or the burger
Pac-Man.
maker game, Pac-Man. It was just, we got these machines that can do these very basic computers, computations and graphics and inputs, and we're gonna Pong, it just does this one thing. You're gonna stick quarters into it all day, and you're gonna see if you can get your number bigger than everybody else's. Those games did not typically get console releases when it was done. They were just arcade games. Asteroids, right? Like, where's the story in Asteroids? The only time you see Asteroids is either in arcades or nostalgic arcade collections that people just play because they're feeling nostalgic. That's the assumption I'm going to make.
Well, you gotta remember the
Ooh.
time though, because
Gameplay was
people
still a
had a lot
novelty at all.
more active imaginations back then. Back then, all you needed was just a yellow circle with a piece cut out of it to believe that this was something that was amazing, something that people thought couldn't get any better than this. Lo and behold,
I
it
don't
did.
think people really thought it was amazing. I think they just had this Tinker toy that, you know, did the thing when they pressed the button, and that was fun, and it was a good way to occupy your time. I don't think they thought it was, and they, you know, it might have been revolutionary. They might have been fascinated with the technology before, but it's not like they were immersed in Pac-Man.
Well, Pac-Man did become a phenomenon, though. I mean, there was a song in the '80s called "Pac-Man Fever." Got a lot of radio play. There was a ton of Pac-Man merchandise that came out. There were different iterations of the game that came out for arcades and consoles.
And
Pac-Man
Foreigner
wasn't
had a
just some-
song about a dude who was really good at pinball. That doesn't mean pinball had a story. It was...
Oh yeah, that's a fantastic point. Where does pinball factor into this? Because they're like the father of modern video games. Or the grandfather of modern ones, but the father of arcade games.
Solidly 100% gameplay,
Yeah.
which sells if that's what you're giving people and what they want. And there's not even any applicable graphics in that, because
No, but
it was
the
a
idea though was
machine.
to try was to get a high score and try to see what other little devices would flicker and flash and do what kind of motions. You would try to activate something that was on the game board or the playing table, whatever, pick your word, and just to rack up the most amount of points that you could. And there is a way to aim. It just like with the flipper, you gotta know when to actually press the button. There is some skill involved. There is still also some luck, because God forbid your ball just happens to not be close to the flipper. But that's
Or
what.
it gets stuck somewhere in the table.
Yeah, I get somewhere
Or
stuck
And
on
then
the
you
table.
gotta find a way to,
dive
and then
right
you
down
gotta
the
find a
center.
way to jostle it without activating the tilt and defaulting on it. The here's the thing though. When you were a kid, and the only game on your computer was solitaire and space pinball, and you played space pinball, were you playing it for the story, or were you playing it because you were super bored? You
Bored.
would have played
Bored,
Sonic
bored,
the
bored,
Hedgehog
bored.
if you could have emulated Sonic the Hedgehog, but you didn't have a powerful enough computer or the computer skills to figure out how to emulate Sonic the Hedgehog. Like, you would have played better games if you had the option. The only
Well,
reason people
I did borrow my buddy's Sonic Mega Collection for the PS2.
Exactly. So and then oftentimes now we weren't allowed to have video games in my house. And at a certain point, my older brother just came home with some consoles that we later found out he had stolen from people. And it's just like, okay, we got video games in the house now. There's not really anything we can do about it. If we just throw the consoles out, we're gonna start a huge whole fight, and it's just better to leave it, right? So then we started playing a little bit of video games. But before that, it was okay, I've done everything, and for me personally, I was like, okay, I've done everything, and I'm bored of writing, and I've already worked out, so and I don't feel like going to bed yet, so I might as well just solitaire. And if I had some of my cousins over and we ran into the same problem, who could get the high score on space pinball? But if we had the option, because we completely stopped playing those when we had the option of something better. And that's why I'm saying story is the most important thing. And gameplay is important, and graphics are important, but story is the most important thing.
Okay, but let me ask you this now. What's the story of Mario Kart?
Interesting. Oh, you know
Mario
something, though, that
Kart's
does
the
bring up a good
gameplay,
point.
everyone.
That does bring up a good point. That Mario Kart is a party game. And party games don't necessarily need to have that, because you've already got everybody over. You've got it's the same sort of thing with Minecraft, with Jackbox, with Among Us, with charades. You don't need to have a story or an objective. You've got all your friends with you already. The game is the experience. So I guess what I'm talking about, you sort of got me backed up into a corner here. So I guess what I'm talking about when I talk about what's most important is what's most important when you're playing by yourself. And that's probably an important distinction that we should have made at the beginning, is in what context are we playing these games. But what were you about to say, Emerald?
I was about to say, I'm still going to have to ask about Mario Kart, because when I got Mario Kart DS, Mario Kart 7, Mario Kart 8, as I said, I was a kid with no friends. I wasn't playing with other people. I was grinding those races for like 8 hours a day because I had fun playing it.
There are games where the gameplay is more important and the story just falls by the wayside and graphics are take it or leave it. Is the original F-Zero had 16-bit graphics that were passable, and the GameCube version had good graphics, but you weren't in it for the graphics, you were in it for the gameplay, and the story mode in the GameCube F-Zero kind of sucked, but it was a really fun racing game.
Any thoughts?
I never really played Mario Kart all that much. I didn't have a Super Nintendo as a kid. I had a Sega Genesis. But yeah, it is basically just a party game. I mean, yeah, it's one you can play all by yourself, but there's not... It must have some sort of an appeal to it if it's still, going on all these many years later. Perhaps, maybe just people like to party. I don't know.
I think what we are witnessing here... Oh, go ahead.
It's fun to race against other people with the chaotic items added. Because you can win by front running a certain way and just staying so far ahead people can't catch up. You can win by doing what's called bagging, where you actually deliberately stay behind and get better items because you stay behind. And if you know the right place to use a bullet bill, you get like half the track on that bullet bill.
Let me ask you this, Emerald, because you were asking me where's the story in Mario Kart. How about, let me counter your question with a question now that I've had time to think. If Mario Kart did not have characters that you recognized from video games with stories that you remembered because, they were good stories, would Mario Kart have been as fun?
That is actually a really difficult question to answer. I didn't get into Mario Kart because of the Mario IP. I got into it because my uncle gave me I think I played on his DS. Regardless, I played it on my uncle's DS. So it wasn't the property that drew me in. It was the availability that drew me in, but the gameplay that kept me in.
And would you have played something different if you had a better option? Because it sounds like that's really all you had at the moment, which is roughly the same argument I was making with the stock computer games.
What else did he have? He had Mario 64 DS, so there was absolutely an option that was probably better. What we're ultimately coming down to here is this is a disagreement between different types of gamers. Because you have stated several times that you are not yourself a gamer, you just play it because you're a sellout. Whereas I actively enjoy video games by myself I would say most of the time, but work, no energy, yay. But for much of my life, video games have been my go-to thing, and it's been a variety of them. And the thing I can think of through all of them, I barely remember, I got Lego Star Wars for my PS2 when I was 6. You think I cared about intergalactic politics at that point? I cared that I got to run around the stage and slice battle droids in half with a lightsaber. So...
And you're right, because even though, these days... I've only ever played video games socially, and these days it's for live streams. At the occasion when we have a party going on over here and we're playing, Mario Party, Mario Monopoly, Smash, Halo, right? So the only time I've ever played video games is with friends. And when I was younger, I played with friends. It was NBA Street, it was SSX, it was Tekken, Street Fighter, things, and I think that was about it really. Halo, Red Faction, right? These are the games that I played with friends, but all of those games sold based on their story.
Hmm.
So yeah, we are definitely two different types of gamers. A second ago, you started saying, I think what we're witnessing here. Was there something additional to that, or did you already say it?
I that was me saying what I just said, which was the whole different types of gamers thing. We are witnessing a disagreement between the two different types of gamers and what they prioritize in their gaming. And I am getting shot at by a piglin.
So, Hariman, I haven't heard from you in a little bit. What do you think about all this?
Curse you, mental thought pattern. You just impersonated Amtrak.
How about this? How about this for some food for thought? Is it the genre that matters most?
Or is it what's least important to each gamer that matters more than what's
Well, no,
most important?
well, think of it like this. I mean, I love adventure platformers and survival horror, so I'm going to be more attracted to those types of games. Party games, unless I'm involved in a party, I'm not really going to care much about. Online multiplayer games, I really don't care about those. So maybe it comes down to the genre, the first, at least on an individual basis.
Well, let's look at survival horror, because I've seen survival horror games that one example is the Resident Evil franchise, where they're typically top tier graphics, at least moderately good gameplay for the time. And the story is usually kind of shit. But everybody wants that good graphics and the gameplay in Resident Evil. But then you get games like, I believe it's called Darkwood, where it's an indie horror game where it's top-down 2D, like 16-bit era graphics. Or you get Fear and Hunger, which is also like the JRPG style graphics, and turn-based battles, where it doesn't look too spectacular, especially compared to modern stuff. But some genres, just graphics don't matter as long as the gameplay and story is there. And that's...
Well, when I compare, say, the original, let's say, for example, the first Resident Evil games that came out, 1, 2, 3, they were, I guess you can say in the grand scheme of things, those didn't age very well, especially the voice acting. But when they did those... Jill, don't. But then suddenly, even before they did the recent remakes, they relaunched them on the GameCube. The first Resident Evil, when they did that, it was 1,000 times better than the original one that came out for, I think it was the N64, and
PlayStation.
PlayStation, and it sold the horror way better than what the originals did, because of the graphical upgrade and the voice acting upgrade as well.
And most of the Resident Evil fan base wanted that graphical upgrade, and here I was over here saying, man, these graphics are beautiful, but this gameplay sucks, and this story is hilariously bad.
I mean, because there actually, believe it or not, there was a Resident Evil game for the Game Boy Color called Resident Evil Gaiden, and it took place on a ship, and when you had to, fire off at zombies, it went to like this weird, interesting rail shooter mode where you had like this kind of thing going back and forth, and you had to line it up at just the right time to fire and get a kill shot. Something like that is not going to translate well for that kind of a system and this kind of a genre. So perhaps the type of genre matters for what comes first, be it graphics, gameplay, or story. So for something like for like survival horror, perhaps the graphics do come first because you're dealing with something that's meant to try to scare you. And with something like Resident Evil, yeah, you want that gore, you want that horror effect. But if you try doing that on, say, like I said previously, Game Boy Color, you're not going to get that. You're just going to get, frankly, a novelty.
You can. I'm going to argue that bad graphics don't make something a novelty.
Well, I don't know
I
what
think
else
there's
to call it.
another. I think there's another factor here where it's whether the game is indie, single A, double A, or triple A gaming. Where someone who makes an indie game like the game Stay, where the character in Stay wakes up in a room with only a computer and a cell phone, and you're on the other end of the cell phone, and you have to talk with him, keep him calm, guide him through puzzles, and you do the puzzles for him for the gameplay. But the graphics in that are like, they're slightly better than the 16-bit era, in a lot of ways. But that is a survival horror game that builds itself around the concept and around the budget, where you could do that with the AAA thing where everything's like 3D, it all looks pretty. But I'm willing to argue that having less graphics means that you can do more with the story to sell the horror in the person's mind with their imagination. And also, you don't need spectacular graphics to sell survival horror, but you can use graphics to sell it if you have that option.
Well, it's not just survival horror. Another example is Grand Theft Auto. There was a Grand Theft Auto game for the Game Boy Color, shockingly enough. And honestly, I don't think a game like that would work for that kind of a system, especially one that's meant to be so violent. For that, you would probably need the graphical upgrade.
I played the game Close Combat on a really old Mac computer, like 25 years ago minimum, maybe closer to 30 years ago by this point. That was little pixel sprites that were like 8-bit era, and that game was actually horrifying for the World War II top-down RTS gameplay you had. And all you had was, if one of your guys got shot, he would just be a little pixel guy there lying in like a dozen red pixels of blood, but that was enough to say, you just lost a guy and his family is going to grieve. Which is really sad, and I shouldn't be saying it in a joking tone, like I am.
Fine, it's a video game. It
They're
doesn't
just
matter.
pixels. Who cares how old they are?
They're gonna rot your brain, son.
Poor naive young me, traumatized by seeing the guy just lose his head in a splatter of blood to a sniper. Hats off for the pixels.
Hariman's over here like, oh my god, these are people. They had families, and everybody's like, it's a video game, dude.
I know it's a video game.
Thank God you're not a soldier. Freaking okay. Oh, do we have anything else we want to?
He's over there trying to nurse the training dummies back to health.
So do we have anything else we want to add, or should we move into audience participation?
I'm ready for audience participation.
Alrighty then.
Yeah, I'm ready
so
for audience.
we only got a few here. We only got a few different people tuning in. But we got a good few questions here. Rusty Helm says, Hariman, how dare you blaspheme the Star Wars prequel trilogy?
I will defend the good points of the prequel trilogy, and I will decry the bad points. The bad points are George Lucas made a movie trilogy that is just utterly campy. It sounds stupid on the surface. It's poorly delivered. But if you peel back that first layer, there is actually a really great Fall from Grace story that goes from before Anakin even becomes a Jedi to Anakin's mentor's mentor dying, Obi-Wan being inspired to bring Anakin into the Order, and then it goes from there with Anakin growing up, developing through through war, becoming arrogant, and eventually his arrogance and belief that he should have everything now is his downfall, combined with the fact that the people who should have been telling him, be patient, we're rushing things, we know you're strong, you will become a Jedi Master someday, it's not today. And this is the test that you can be now. And it's good, but it's delivered poorly. And I'll defend it as at least George Lucas was trying and gave us something that was both entertaining and there is something to talk about.
And it made a very solid Lego game.
Paladin Pony T says, Brawny, a lot of older games have no story, but people still love them. That was what I was talking about earlier. We ended up getting into that with when I was talking about arcades, and it was just more or less a time sink, quarter stealer sort of system there, rather than actual gameplay that people were inspired to keep coming back to. It's hard to quantify, I admit it, and maybe I'm even wrong, but that's the vibe I get off of it. I hope any of that makes any level of sense.
Ooh, you know what? Can I backtrack out of audience participation real quick? Because I just remembered a very good point to make.
Okay, sure, go for it.
Speedrunners. They throw out the entirety of the story of the gameplay the entirety of the story of the game just to see how much they can master the gameplay to beat the game as quickly as possible.
Don't they play the game through once with the story and everything to get a sense of that first, though?
Well, yes, but that's more so of a sense. This is they do it the right way the first time to figure out how does the game want me to beat it. Then the subsequent ones is, how can I tell it no? But sure, maybe they had a meaningful experience from the story the first time they went through, but it's the gameplay that keeps them coming back, learning that next little technique, learning that you can, in Twilight Princess, stare at a rupee for 6 hours to clip through the backside of a room to beat the game without doing pretty much anything that you're supposed to. It's the gameplay that gets them to come back.
Rusty Helm says, Brawny admits he's wrong. I said, no. I said, there's a chance I might be wrong. There's a difference. I've admitted when I've been wrong on this show before. Right now is not that moment. Let's see here. Dirty Harry Potter had a few of them. He said, you can stylize graphics to cover up bad looks and bad story gameplay. No. He just put the word no at the end there. I don't know if that means, if that was supposed to be a question, like no, or no, he disagrees with that whole statement of you can put makeup on a pig.
Yeah, it's very hard to use graphics to make up for bad gameplay.
Indeed. Let's see.
Generally
here.
only manageable in hentai games.
Which is what he said next.
Nobody is there for anything.
And then the next thing he said was, of course, there are always hentai games.
Yep, a rogue game can get away with anything as long as the pornography is good.
I don't even think the porn has to be good. Like, people just are just, down bad and perverted.
I mean, hell, there was porn games for Atari.
Yeah, that is true.
Freaking Custer's Revenge.
Yeah,
whoever made that game, that was a sick and twisted mind that made that game.
Agreed.
All right.
There's one comment I'd like to highlight, which is from Rusty Helm 93.
Yeah.
He says, again, depends on the graphics, but I would say in general, story 30%, gameplay 30%, graphics 20%, music 20%.
Do you agree with that?
I'd add 10%. I'd add 10% to story at least, and I'd take a little off all the others. Music I'd add the most to, because a lot of times games will pull me in with a good soundtrack. So,
oh yeah, Undertale, Friday Night Funkin'. What's one that's come across recently? Ocarina of Time.
Skies of Arcadia's title screen pulled me in. Just the sweeping orchestral score.
Super Mario Galaxy.
Let's see here. Dirty Harry Potter says, what about Team Fortress 2? Team Fortress 2 has story. The story, now granted, the game itself is just team shooter, control point, objective, move the cart, things like that. But
I would argue that Team
the
Fortress
story
2...
the story is in the classes. The story is in how they interact with each other, and there's supplementary material as well. Now I don't know if that counts. That's a philosophical debate, and the answer is going to be different for every person. But the Team Fortress 2 has story. Somebody else said characterization goes a long way. 99 of Team Fortress 2's story is in the characterization, so I definitely agree with that statement. But I would attest that Team Fortress 2 has story. What do you guys think?
I don't think I've ever played that game, to be honest with you. So, like I said, I don't really do online multiplayer games.
I think with Team Fortress 2, if you're including all the Meet the Character videos and the comics, it's one of those games that actually kind of has everything. It's definitely got like 100% in gameplay. That Team Fortress 2 is just all gameplay to start. I don't think Team Fortress 2 would have become as big as it did without the class introduction videos and everybody just being able to latch onto them, and then the comics building off of that. But Team Fortress 2's graphics, they've never been the best graphics, but they have had style out the yin yang, where people want to have as much style and just unique readability and characterization as their portraits have. Just because you can see who all the classes are from a glance. All the classes
definitely
have
passes the silhouette test.
Yes.
So I see two more here. House of Anubis says everything is just as important as the other parts. That feels like a cop-out, but I can definitely see where you're coming from. Like I was saying, I still think gameplay takes a close second to story. And let's see here. There was one more. Oh, Paladin Pony T says we barely talked about music in game. So how much do you guys think music factors into all of this?
It matters.
Music
matters a lot.
Music is very, very important. If you have a good
honestly,
soundtrack,
I think a big reason why Minecraft took off is because of the soundtrack. It introduced the world of ambient music to people.
I'd hate to bring the same game up again, but Undertale, not half, but a good chunk of why people like it is because the music is so catchy. And as you play the game, you start hearing the leitmotifs of the various characters and areas and story beats coming back again and again, which just connects the whole story to itself.
And let's face it, we do know that music that plays when you battle Sans, so...
Oh my god, it's that song, Dad!
Yeah, everybody knows that.
Fun fact, that wasn't originally from Undertale.
Really?
Yeah, it was from the ROM hack of, what was it, Earthbound, the Halloween
No kidding.
hack.
Yeah. Well, actually, I don't know the order of events. It's either from that or from Homestuck.
Interesting.
Homestuck and Undertale have a lot of crossover.
Yep, because Toby Fox worked on them both.
And now he's working on the Pokemon games.
Oh God.
He's several of the tracks in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet,
just
including
when
one of
you
the
thought
major
Pokemon couldn't get any worse, they bring in the Undertale guy.
No,
have
his songs are bangers.
Yeah, they hired him for a good reason because he writes really good boss music.
By the same token, how many times have you guys played a game with a horrible story and or barely functioned and or didn't have good graphics and then went, dang, the music saves this whole game?
Never.
You're about to talk about Friday Night Funkin', aren't you?
Friday Night Funkin' is a good example. But I would sooner say that, I mean, they got elements of story and people like that type of gameplay, and it's not half bad for its style. So it's a musical game, so the music is very important, as is with all rhythm games.
Music can't usually save a game that's really awful. People just enjoy the soundtrack in that case and say, yeah, I bought this game just for the soundtrack. I barely play it. But in a game that's decent, music adds a lot because it can improve a lot of things without you even truly realizing it. Just by being fitting with the story beats, making the emotional hits feel deeper, making the laughs harder because the soundtrack matches up.
I think music is very important as a garnish. You would definitely notice if it wasn't there, but I don't think it's the most important part of the game. I think it is part of the story, gameplay, and graphics, and therefore very important. I don't think it makes or breaks the game. Like, there's a lot of games out there with bad soundtracks that you can still play and enjoy because they have good gameplay and story.
And you just turn the music off if it's really that bad.
Yeah.
And you turn the music up if it's really that good. Like in games like Devil May Cry, where, yeah, the focus is gameplay and it looks pretty and the story is usually at least fun.
I am the storm that is approaching.
Bang, bang, bang. Call me Devil Trigger.
Yeah.
I was about to sing that, and you just completely ruined it by saying it so calmly.
It's over 9,000. Raw. I couldn't resist that.
It's over 9,000, Vegeta said calmly.
Why do you sound so bored?
Because it's still not a threat to me. All right, now, before I get copyright infringement here, is there anything else we want to add to this, or should we wrap it up?
Just going over what I said earlier about the whole genre. I think maybe you need to look at the genre first and see what you could get away with what comes first in said genre. Like I said, if you're doing a survival horror game, then perhaps maybe you want to focus on graphic first. If you're just doing a simple platformer, then perhaps maybe it's the gameplay that comes first. So maybe it kind of comes down to the genre.
I can agree with that. Hariman, what do you think?
There is a certain amount of flexibility depending on what type of game is being made and both genre and just what the player wants. If they want gameplay, first of all, they're going to just want the gameplay. Graphics and story won't matter much. But my personal preference is story, gameplay, graphics. And my last quick point on Devil May Cry is they tie music into the gameplay, where if you're sucking, you can barely hear the soundtrack. But if you're doing good, as you start to climb the different letter ranks in combat, the music gets louder and louder and you can hear it more and more. And one thing people don't realize about Devil May Cry is that there's a certain amount of rhythm game in it where a lot of the attacks and a lot of the moves are timed to the music. Where if you're on beat with the music, you're actually going to do better at the game.
All the enemies in Devil May Cry are like, why do I hear boss music?
Dante has
No,
entered
they
the
don't want
chat.
the boss music there because it's theirs. They're like, why is the boss music getting more intense?
All right, I think that's
It's
a good
not-
spot to. I think that's a good spot to wrap it up, guys. Oh, I see Dirty Harry Potter. You can tell that Brawny is a writer because he beats the story drum like it owes him money. Zeus Assassin just came back from watching the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. Definitely go watch it if you haven't. Sure.
Now, should we watch it for the story or for the graphics?
With what they did to April O'Neil's design, we are definitely not watching it for the graphics.
April O'Neil's
Hey.
design. Have you seen the turtles? They look like mutant blobs of mutant blobs.
Mutant
They're
blobs of
hideous.
mutant blobs. That's an amazing simile you got there, Hariman. Don't quit your day job.
No, that's actually amazing because they're so badly mutated that you can't just say they're mutant blobs. Mutant blobs would be like, nah, they can't be us.
Yeah, the older generations of the turtles would look at the newest ones and say, "What's wrong with you? We need to cure you."
Rusty
That's
Helm
how bad
93.
they are.
What kind of bootleg ooze did you get your snouts into?
Rusty Helm 93 said there was a few Sonic games where the only thing they had going for it was the music.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can
All
say
right,
that.
I'm gonna wrap it up there, gentlemen. Did you guys enjoy the debate tonight?
Actually,
I
yeah,
had
sure.
a ton of fun.
Yep, it was a nice little pivot. I don't like doing part twos anyway, but like we were initially going to talk about more bad writing advice, and you guys seemed to enjoy that so much last week. But yeah, maybe we'll still do that part two sometime. I don't know what's going to happen. I fly by the seat of my pants week to week.
Yep.
Alrighty then.
Mhm.
So, thanks to everybody who supports the channel, especially the $10 and up tier, such as Princess Heather Blossom, Shady Oak Ministries, Sid McConroy, Autoknight, EmeraldSpencer, who's with us tonight, Senko, DJ Skywalker, Rein-Kun, Pony Cordero, QFlash, Billy Henline, Alden MacManx, EasyModeGamer, Kanto Acrylic VA, Mr. Sonic 31, Ridge the Hedgehog, Alicia Lynette, Zeta Z, Sniper Nighter, Calbic, StarChaser, VentureCorp, Willie Eisen, 7 equals 1 Heart, and Dark Malcontent, executive producer of Titan Art Studios. If you would like to be on the show, we'd love to have you. Be sure to check out everybody's content in the description. Thank them for their support, as well as see what you can get in return for your support yourself. We've got a lot to choose from. So, with that being said, stay safe, God bless, have a good night, and if you guys are interested, tune in to Princess Heather Blossom's channel. In a little under an hour, she's going to be crocheting. I'm going to be there hanging out with the chat, and yeah, we're gonna have a fun time. Have a good night, everyone. Say good night.
Good night, guys.
Have a good night, everybody.